Warm welcome to everyone to Me Vision Academy for a very special occasion. Today we present a special award to a special award of successful leadership to Bonang Mohale. We'll welcome him in a moment. And after doing so, we will interview him around leadership, around the specific reasons for this award. So we're very excited about that. We're also very excited about all the people here. More and more people are joining. We really appreciate you all, and I have no doubt Bonang also appreciates you for joining him. The actual presentation of the award will be a few minutes. After that, we then interview him. So you're welcome to stay, or maybe you feel you need to go. But we appreciate you coming today. Well, for almost a quarter century, we've interviewed and worked with leaders, top leaders, all the way to presidential level. It's been such an interesting ride. We've written a few books, hundreds of articles, and had a few interesting platforms on which we interviewed top leaders. All this has culminated in what we call Me Vision Academy. And one of our core purposes is exactly what we're doing here today. In essence, we track successful leaders, and then we recognize and celebrate them. We learn from them by doing an intense interview with them, and then we share it with the world, hoping to inspire more successful leaders. We believe the world needs this desperately. Okay, we don't often enough recognize successful leadership. What we also do is we help less prominent leaders, because it's easy to track Bonang, but it's not that easy to track less prominent leaders who also deserve successful leadership recognition. So we built a platform called Leader Track, on which we can track leaders, and then we can actually honestly give them a successful leadership award. So today we welcome Bonang Mohale. He's Chancellor of University of Free State. Well, there's so many interesting roles that he plays. President of BUSA, the body of businesses, so many business organizations part of BUSA, but that's the overall business representation for society and engaging government. Chairman of several large companies like Bidvest and others. He's an author of 2 books, very good books and very interesting. He was included in the Reputation Poll International's 2023 list of 100 most reputable Africans. And there are more. Okay, he's an energetic man, so he's involved everywhere and anywhere, family man, and so much more. So honestly, it's an absolute privilege, Bonang. I just want to quickly let some more people in here, make sure that they all come in as we start our actual conversation. And what I want to do is pin you so that we see you and those who are going to be participating. That's Bonang Mohale, for those who will be watching this in the future, and also pin myself. There we go. Bonang, welcome and congratulations. Honestly, from the depths of our hearts, we have been tracking you, as I say, and you stand out as a leader on so many fronts. You're not perfect. None of us are perfect, but you're on this amazing journey. You energize us. You energize society. If you don't know Bonang, just sit in one of his interviews and you will be so energized. So welcome and congratulations. Unmute quickly.
I was just trying to make sure that you don't have feedback. And let me ask the rest of my colleagues who have joined also to put themselves on mute. A million thanks for this recognition, Adrian. Much appreciated.
Bonang, we don't do it lightly. So I'm going to share and then show the actual award. Let me just get rid of this. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, it's an exclusive recognition, Bonang, of successful leadership, awarded to yourself, Bonang Mohale, for what? For several reasons, and these are just some of the reasons we believe make someone a successful leader. Because you consistently led yourself successfully. You have been doing that for a long time. Consistently leading people successfully. Cannot be a leader without doing that. Successfully leading as a senior executive and CEO. in various areas, successfully leading society in various impactful roles now. We mentioned a couple of them. And then your commitment to mentoring, inspiring future successful leaders. How can one be a truly successful leader if you don't have a passion for that specific point 5? Of course, signed by one of the co-founders of Me Vision Academy. Our slogan is a journey to best self-confidence. And we'll talk to Bonang about how he did that. So yes, that's the certificate or the award, Bonang, and it's an honor for us to give it to you and to just sort of talk to you about leadership today. You've clearly led successfully over the years. As I said, our slogan, our Me Vision Academy slogan is a journey to best self-confidence. And I want us to kind of go systematically through these reasons for the award today. So let me ask you, how have you gone about working towards your best self?
So Adrian, first I think, I was elected as the president of BUSA, the apex organization of 67 other organizations, at an AGM to represent 67 other organizations. This is the organization that is constitutionally mandated to be the only representative at NEDLEC, where there's government, there's business, there's civil society, but also there's labor. After 2 years, this last AGM in August, typically I thought, it's our time, even though it's only 2 years of a 3-year tenure, to give up this to somebody who's younger, cleverer, much more educated, and much more eloquent than I am. So August, I think I gave my notice to step down. But the other rules, I must say, Adrian, I'm grateful to the people that have held me up, opened up spaces, worked with me, counsel coached me to ensure that eventually I can look at myself in the mirror and say I am a leader. It's going to take me a long time, but eventually I will get there. Some of those colleagues of mine, much more senior than myself, have actually dialed in today. And for that, I am truly grateful. It is genuinely much appreciated. I'm absolutely touched, profoundly humbled, and deeply honored indeed. Adrian?
Well, okay, so you're saying people like those here today and others have, as mentors and examples and so on, played a role on your journey to best self. But give us some more tips for those leaders, those future successful leaders who will be watching this. How have you gone about this best self journey? And I'm talking about the bigger things, maybe like studying and qualifying myself, but also the smaller things, refining one's character or your personality or your interpersonal skills. What have you done to become the person you are today? Where does it come from?
So first, the context is important, especially this year in the wake of what we are facing these days. We have seen just in 2023, and it's not over yet, some prominent CEOs that have quit. The CEO of Eskom, of Transnet, of Transaction Capital, of Tiger Brands, of Bell Equipment, of Pick n Pay, of Nampec, of Process, or known in South Africa as Naspers, one of the oldest companies. So first, I think you have to acknowledge that you are lucky. For me, it's like boiling rooibos and using a sieve to pour into a cup. It doesn't matter how careful you are, there will always be 2-3 leaves that have punched through that cup. And I'm one of those 3. I look up and I see millions of much more able leaders than myself, better grades, bigger companies, much more articulate, and yet they've not made it. So I think that's very humbling. Number 2, I suppose, is consistency, staying the course. Nobody remembers the years of disappointment, of struggle, of toil, of blood, sweat, and tears. But people will remember Patrice having been a billionaire. They won't remember when he pounded the streets moving from one company to the other, looking for a deal. Most of us have forgotten that he served his article at Bowman Kilfillan and Associates. We always associate him with just being a leader. I think for me, there are three attributes that are consistent in defining leadership. One is some sort of a compelling vision, because leadership presupposes followership. People must want to follow you because you can't command followership. Secondly, is courage. You can't be lily-livered and hope to lead people. The other side of the coin is that you have to love your people to lead them. The third is integrity. This is the one that is less sexy, because somebody can steal money from government, bankrupt a 150-year-old company like Tongat Hewlett, or even Steinhoff, where people have bet their farm, sold their pensions and retirement funds, and you can still run for public office. Or you can still go and be a CEO in another entity because we have valued less integrity. This is wholesomeness. This is what you say as a leader. It is not useful to say, I've not been found guilty by a court of law, because by mere acceptance that you are a leader, you subject yourself to a higher form of standards, of principles, of ethics, of morality, not just the purity of law. Let me end by saying, to really bring this point home, I'm reminded of the fact that the people that hid Steve Bantu Biko before he was brutally killed were breaking the law. The people that hid Anne Frank were breaking the law. But the people that killed both of them were obeying the law. So it's not just the law in its absolute terms, it's the law applied in context. The law in search of a bigger ideal like social justice. Adrian.
Bonang, so when one moves on this journey towards your best self and you apply integrity and consistency and those wonderful principles you spoke of, how does that impact one's authentic confidence? I'm not talking about this projected confidence and that's almost arrogant. But do you agree that that journey to one's best self creates an individual who has this quiet, beautiful, genuine confidence?
Two things. One, confidence is gained through competence. Knowing that I've done the work, I've put in the 10,000 hours, that I've prepared, that I'm going to talk about three things. I might leave the paper at home, but they remain etched in my mind. The preparedness to say, do I respect my audience enough to have put in the work? The confidence that says, do I have something new to share? The confidence that says, can I take people from where they are to a place where they've never been? The second one is a notion that simply says, if wealth is the inevitable outcome of both hard work and enterprise, then every woman in Africa should be a dollar billionaire. The reason that they are not talks to the fact that just a few of us punch through the proverbial concrete ceiling to make it into the realm of leadership. There are many more that are much more deserving, but for whatever reason, they just didn't make it, especially because at any point in time in the world, 8 billion of us, there are more women than there are men. And in South Africa, there's 60.02 million of us. As per the last official census, you and I know we are closer to 65 million. 51% of those are women, in spite of the fact that more boys are born than girls. Adrian?
Interesting. Thank you, Bonang. Old man, something you want to say about leading self and some of Bonang's comments before we go to leading others, people?
No, I don't know. I'm very interested in the follow-up questions with Bonang. He's inspirational to me. Please go ahead, Arden.
So leading self is the one element. One does always get that impression, and as I say, we've been tracking you directly, indirectly for many years, that you are very good at leading yourself. What have you learned about leading people towards their best self? So it's one thing for me to go to my best self, but how do I actually help others get to their best self, those people that you lead in your organization and organizations?
I like the way you have structured it because actually it's quite sequential. It starts with self-mastery. My grandmother says, if your own cup is empty, how do you feel other people's cups? If you don't have inner peace, how then do you find peace and beauty and glory and joy in others? If you yourself are not content, how do you plant contentment in others? Therefore, this self-leadership is absolutely key, because it's only when you can say, I've been there, done that, that then you are able to pour into others. Here, now you become a supervisor. And the definition simply says, how do I then get things done through others? Because up until then, I was saying, if it is to be done, then it's up to me. I was managing probably only two things: ambiguity and uncertainty. And I was managing them to a point. There could only be one answer. By the time you introduce yourself as a supervisor, you are now, instead of converging this to a single answer, diverging that to a multiplicity of answers. It's an acceptance that nobody is just one thing. Nobody can just be bad or just be good. In business, it's about saying, when people come to you with an answer, your job as a supervisor is to say, but have you thought about option A and option B? What if the weather doesn't hold? What if the economy tanks? What if there's another pandemic? Therefore, you diverge it so that you are not happy with one answer, so that those that you are supervising can go about being absolutely crystal clear about what is expected of them, whilst they are being sustainable in the short term, and having their eyes on this notion called long-term resilience. Because in Africa, surely resilience has to be much more than the food, water, energy nexus. Lastly, it's about saying, now as a supervisor of others, first, I am a leader of leaders. I'm an equal amongst equals. Therefore, I don't give instructions, I don't command. I ask, I humble myself. Because the higher the corporate ladder you go, the more accessible you want to be, the more humble you are, so that you can demonstrate beyond any shadow of doubt that even when you might assail the pinnacle of the C-suite and be called group CEO, you will still retain your humanity, because your people actually don't care about how much you know. They just want to know that you genuinely care about them.
Bonang, you seem to have an inherent respect for people. I want to say, despite position. Okay, there's an underlying belief or philosophy or mindset that you have about people. Where does it come from? Is it from parents? Is it, did you somewhere in your life decide that people are truly important? They are not just assets. Where does it, just unpack that for me?
I think I'm surrounded by it everywhere I look. Number one, it's the understanding at a deeply profound level that says, what is the company? Surely the company can't be bricks and mortars, because a company that is inappropriately located can move its headquarters, move from Cape Town to Johannesburg. A company that is short on cash can leverage its position, go and borrow from the bank and be able to continue operations. But a company that is short on people is a dead company, because there are only two types of companies: the ones that have good people and the one that has bad people. The quick and the dead, those that have been hacked and those that don't know that they've been hacked. The centrality of all those things, bang in the middle of the center, it's people. So when we say we put people first, we need to be explicit. First before what? We need to say first before profit. first before the continuance and the success of the organization. In HSSE, as an acronym for Health, Safety, Security, and Environment, you start first with people. How does it manifest? If I'm running Shell Oil Products Africa, which I did, and we have a depot in Alberton, the smallest tank is 3 million liters. When something goes wrong, you don't burn the depot, Alberton itself, you incinerate the whole tank. Can you give people the wherewithal and trust them explicitly to do the right things and always look after what's in the best interest of the company? So at Shell, we gave each one of our employees 3 cards, red, amber, and green. When you caught somebody doing something absolutely new and innovative, that is taking us forward in space and in time, you gave them a green card as a way of saying thank you. When you found the CEO of the company talking on his cell phone and still running down the stairs, and you know that they might stumble and fall, break their neck and die, as a cleaner, you give them a red card. They see the red card, they stop dead still in their tracks, and they realize what they've done, and they take and complete the call first before they proceed. That month end, when they release their results, they start first by saying, thank you to Memadi Khetsi for giving me a red card when I was directing Adrian Endhoven, who's coming to visit me at Shell at the Dimension Data Campus, and got lost in giving him directions, and I saw myself walking down the stairs, holding on one hand, but still at risk of stumbling and falling. Then the people look at you and say, oh, this thing of people first is actually genuine. Instead of this being a career-limiting move to Memadi Khetsi is palleted, highlighted, and celebrated. So people are the be-all and the end-all. In fact, at the higher level, people can steal my laptop when I leave it at the airport. They might steal my Arch Lever 5 in the rugby box whilst I'm watching the Springboks play New Zealand, the All Blacks. But they won't be able to replicate the company, because the company is the people and the ecosystem, how they engage, interact, and interface. It is that interaction. It is that humanity. It is the glue that holds us together, that even if you have stolen, you are unable to replicate, share. You might call it something else, but it will never be share. Adrian?
Bonang, yeah, I often speak of the P's in leadership. So when you look at leadership, you think of words like power, you think of profits, you think of position, possessions, prosperity, performance, you think of popularity, prestige, but then you also think of people and purpose. Do you think that you see corporate South Africa from an interesting angle? You have for a few years now, from BLSA to Busa and other places. Are we prioritizing people above the other P's enough in corporate society?
We can always do more, Adrian. So the first is the one that says, if people are our most valuable possession, do we really believe that? And do we give them and put them on the asset side of our balance sheet? Or do we see them as a liability? If we do we tell them enough that they are indeed the business? How do we show up? How do we look them in the centerpiece of the pupils of their eyes and say, you are the business, and genuinely believe it? Mm-hmm. I think there's a bit of work that still needs to be done, because this piece around people is the one that says it's the stuff of leadership, because a good leader does not create many followers. A good leader creates other leaders. There's a wonderful African adage that says the product of the marula tree is not the amarula fruit, it's another amarula tree. Because when you create other leaders, you lose nothing. You gain more friends, you gain more colleagues. You are then able to send your niece and nephews to say, go and see Jacobus Hendrik Fester, who's my boss at ArcelorMittal. Maybe he might sort you out. He might not even need to interview them. He says, where do you come from? Bonang's nephew? You know what? Go and start by cleaning our toilets. Because if you do it well, you might end up in our kitchen. Because they trust Bonang, they have a belief that this might have rubbed off on his nieces and nephews. I say it almost as a joke, but when G.T. Ferreira and Paul Harris and Patrick Goss and Laurie Dippenaar were looking for a CEO of FNB, they didn't go to number 1 up to 4 Merchant Place. They went to Jordan's house in Stellenbosch because they know the parents, they know how he was brought up, they know his lineage. And they said, we would like you to be the CEO, Michael, of FNB. They did something else that was absolutely unusual. They went to Jacques Cilier's house and said, Jacques, your job is to make sure that he looks good. Michael Jordan looks good. Because if you do an incredibly good job of that, you are next in line. Imagine starting a job knowing that you are next in line. That's the people component. It's about saying, can we be in the business of creating other leaders? The way I think about it as I end, when a candle lights another candle, it loses nothing but gains more light.
Bonang, what was that tree? Did you say marula tree, or what tree was it?
Marula tree. I could have said an apple tree.
Yeah. I mean, that's a powerful example, isn't it? I love that. Old man, anything you want to add?
Yes, Arden, as we told Bonang, we're going to send out key messages from this interview. And I am thrilled. Bonang, you've got experience of what many good leaders speak, the brutal world of top leadership. It's not for sissies, it's not for weak men. And yet, Bonang has developed a core passion to put people first as being a practical, not just a empathetic one, but being a practical way to really be successful. The people are the business. But having formed that from your own background, Bonang, of succeeding in the brutal world of top business, you've put the heart back into what's authentic leadership is all about. And I personally, I thank you for that, Bonang.
Bonang, so it's leading self is the foundation. Then leading others, leading people is just the essence. But then you still have your structures and systems and processes and budgets and your board you have to manage and the buildings. And just give us a few key elements of how to run organizations successfully over and above the people who form part of it. What have you seen? What are you seeing now, especially in the context of the world we live in? What does it take to run a successful organization?
And again, if I take it from first principles, the best amongst us lead with a heart of a servant. It's about saying to your people, am I prepared to ask you to do something which I am myself prepared to do? Today, there's 60.2 million of us South Africans. We're suffering because the country is going south. It's going south because as business, we are not occupying the space that has been thrust upon us. The Edelman Trust Foundation 20th anniversary in 2023 says business is trusted more than politicians, more than NGOs, more than media, especially social media. What are we doing to come up and meet this trust? I've been blessed that in every single solitary one of the companies where I've been finally accountable, I've left other leaders. But because in South Africa, you can't talk about leadership without saying, does this leadership reflect, does it look like us? Is it broadly reflective of the demographics? And that, in short, we call transformation. Transformation simply says it has to look different for us to break the cycle. And you do that by retaining the core and stimulating growth. Therefore, when I look at other companies and say, but you must transform, can I look at myself in the mirror and say, but I've lived that transformation myself? Transformation is not just color, it's not just gender, it's also business models. It's how we engage, interact, and interface with others. It's the competitive landscape. But as far as does it look like us, it is absolutely key, because it is not sustainable that 8.3% of the population occupies 67% of positions of leadership. C-suite I'm talking about. It's not sustainable that I, as a man, am part of men who have not made it possible for 51% of the population to be reflective of the demographics. Women in positions of leadership are less than 24%. African women, less than 4%. It can't be sustainable that in the 21st century, we still pay women 75% of what we pay men for work of equal value. And yet we know that when you put a smartphone in the hands of a woman, not only does the health, nutrition, and education of their own children improve, but of the entire society and the community from which they come. The pandemic has taught us many things. Of the 198 countries that were infected and affected by this pandemic, 8 of them dealt better with the pandemic than all others. And all 8 were led by women as heads of state than those that are led by men. New Zealand and its 5 million people. Angela Merkel's Germany. So if we can trust women to save our lives and our lives during this 1 in 100-year event, why are we not trusting women with our companies? These companies that have lost their CEOs now, just this year, I can bet you, they are not even thinking about women leaders. They are thinking about the old boys network, because I see more merit in people that look like me, that speak like me, that walk like me, that smoke the same brand of cigarette as I do. And that's what we need to break that cycle. That to me is really putting systems and processes in place. Because if we don't, the 2 weeks in July of 2021 of a failed insurrection and rampant looting is going to happen again and again and again, because the material that is combustible was already there. All it needed was a spark, a tinderbox. Anything could have sparked it. So if we want long-term resilience, if we want sustainability, if we want to be internationally competitive, we need to make sure that the majority of our people have something to lose. Because if you have nothing to lose, you will burn the fire truck that you share with the next town, knowing very well that 2 in the morning, your own significant other might need the very ambulance to save your life. We have to make it look different to break the cycle. Adrian?
Bonang, thank you for all that. Very, very important context in our society, for sure. The last 1 or 2 questions that I want to explore with you is this developing of more successful leaders. We want to get to more leaders, of course, and give them a well-earned successful leadership recognition. We're now finding key leaders with whom we do it, but that just sets the tone. Inside large organizations, there are lots of successful leaders that just need to be tracked, and we need to know that these people deserve it. What are your thoughts on how we can, at a faster rate, develop more successful leaders in our organizations, in politics? Surely we're not doing enough. We need to do more.
Absolutely. So first is saying, when your boss wants you to succeed, you will succeed. Therefore, it starts with us as leaders. Yes, there are some people that stand head and shoulders above the rest, and they are born leaders, but most leaders are made. Isn't it amazing that those teachers that have a high expectation of their pupils always, not generally, do well? Because when you say to somebody, you are a rock star, they believe it, they internalize it, they start walking and talking like a rock star. The teacher that you loved at school, you also loved their subject. If you loved the math teacher, you became good in mathematics. If we see that causal relationship, then we're onto something. The second one is the one that says, we coach people at work so that they are good at what they do. but we mentor them for general leadership so that they can cope in any environment. We sponsor them so that we can speak for them on their behalf. Once you have identified somebody and say, I want you to be my successor, you stop at nothing to ensure that they are ready to take over from you. Because my grandmother says, when a student is ready, a teacher will appear. Nature is an amazing metaphor for business. Everything that nature does, it never does for itself. It always does for others. In our quest for creating more leadership, can we be more other, not self-centered? Can we see beauty and joy and excellence in others, not in us? In English, we call it the Peter principle. Rather than being promoted to my point of incompetence, can I surround myself with people that are much better than me? Unlike in government, you come for an interview with a PhD, they interview, you go out, they say, don't call me, I'll call you. When you leave, they say, I'm not calling this one. This one is going to take my job. In the private sector, we know that when we've got a good executive assistant, you are a good boss. When we've got a team of exco, all 8 of them good and magnificent in their own right, you take the credit. You look like a good boss. So why are we reluctant to put leaders forward, especially women leaders? Lastly, I think there's a piece to be said about the fact that nobody is born an MD, a chairman, or a president. Somebody believed in you and gave you your chance, threw you in the deep end. You paddled like hell to make sure that you don't sink, but you swim. Nobody can learn to be a good swimmer just by reading a textbook. At some stage, you have to dip your big toe in the cold water. When we give people a chance to practice what it is like to be a leader and an opportunity to fail, then we are onto something. Because we learn more from those things that we don't get right the first time than from those that we do. Therefore, leadership is about catching your people doing the right thing, piloting and highlighting and celebrating them. It's about standing on rooftops and saying, I've got a rock star here. When they do something wrong, it's about asking them in private to say, can I come in your office to chastise you in private? Because all of us are human. And because of that, all of us carry egos. And we don't want to be embarrassed in public. Because leadership is about saying, can we liberate better humans? Can we be the voice of the voiceless? Can we give our people an opportunity to reach their potential, not their fullest potential? Recognizing as leaders that ego is the enemy of leadership the same way that panic is the enemy of progress. That arrogance is the camouflage for insecurity. That we were created imperfect, not by accident, but by design. That's what humbles us. Adrian.
Bonang, Mohale, thank you so much. I'm going to ask you to give a final message to leaders in a moment. And I want the old man to just summarize a few thoughts. But while we do that, I'm going to, for those who joined a little later, I'm going to show you the award that we gave Bonang. This is it. An exclusive recognition of successful leadership awarded to Bonang Mohale for consistently leading himself, people, organization, and society effectively and successfully, and also being very committed to mentoring, inspiring future successful leaders. And it's from Me Vision Academy, where we strive to take people on a journey to their best self, which leads to incredible confidence, authentic confidence. So, old man, quick thoughts, and then we'll ask Bonang for a final message for leaders, which we'll also extract and share out there.
Bonang, we use an expression sometimes to explain different kind of intelligences. The one we find in authentic leadership is that of context intelligence, the ability to put whatever you do in context to the whole. But this requires a considerable amount of emotional intelligence and an ability also to keep all those balloons in the air. What you should reflect is a high level of context intelligence, and we are delighted to present this award to you for that reason, amongst many others. Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you, old man. Bonang, your final message. I'm just going to remove pin there and remove here. And then if you can just give us your final message.
All of us, I think, are preoccupied with the fact that in 2024 will be 30 years into our democracy. As leaders, can we look back and say, business is not our second chance, but our last hope? Because leaders are dealers in hope. As you think about that, you say there's 1.2 million students in the 26 public universities that collectively owe 16.5 billion of historical debt, 9.2 billion of which is irrecoverable. 100,000 current leaders are unable to graduate, even though they've completed their studies, because they owe these institutions this 16.5 billion. And yet the solution is so simple and within reach. And I exclude the 2.5 million small and medium enterprises. And I start with the 1.5 million medium-sized companies with a turnover of 300 million and above. And I look at the 400 companies that are listed on the JSE main board and the Alt-X. And in particular, the 60 companies that hold securities in 80 private equity firms. All of them have some sort of a corporate social investment. All of them have, at least in their 4 focus areas, something to do with education. When each one of those leaders can put R1 million in this historical debt fund of what is already approved by their own board, that they've already budgeted for, not in 29 years of democracy, but in 1 year, would have wiped off the entire 16.5 billion rand that is owed by these 1.2 million students in our 26 public universities, so that they don't suffer from mental health issues. They don't suffer from food insecurity and period poverty. But we give them hope, because it's Napoleon Hill who reminds us that whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, it will achieve. Business needs to step up to the plate, because here's an opportunity. When we create jobs, it's not CSI. We create our own market of the future. In fact, Henry Ford saw this before us. So I want to create cars that my own workers can afford. Thank you, Adrian.
Bonang Mohale, let's just throw out to everyone there. Thank you so much. And I think you have lots to think about, that last message. You know, we're saying business leaders are already ahead of the pack as far as trust is concerned, above government and other areas of society, yet you're saying step up some more. Thank you. So leaders need to step up, and then get their leaders under them to step up. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to all of you for joining Bonang today, and we look forward to sharing that. That's Me Vision Academy, recognizing Bonang Mohale for his successful leadership, and we are grateful for leaders like him and many others, and we're going to find them, and we're going to learn from them and recognize them, and we look forward to that. Thank you so much.